Sherry, 25F, used to think fairy tales ended with wedding bells and white dresses. That once the cake was cut and the bouquet thrown, life would settle into love and laughter. I was wrong. I met Mark when I was 25, working at a marketing firm in Chicago. He was sweet, attentive, a bit old-fashioned in a way that felt charming at the time. He held doors open, always paid the check, and said things like, "A man should take care of his wife." Back then, I thought it was romantic. I didn't know it was foreshadowing. We dated for a year before he proposed. A simple picnic in the park, on a blanket under the stars. I said yes, of course I did. I loved him, or at least the version of him he let me see. The wedding was small but beautiful. My parents had passed away years ago, so his family took center stage. His mother, Doris, took over every decision, from the flowers to the guest list to the first dance song. I chalked it up to excitement. She only had one son, after all. After the honeymoon in Maui, reality hit hard. Mark sat me down and told me we'd be moving in with his mother for a little while. Just until we saved up to buy a house. He made it sound practical, even wise. I hesitated, but he kissed my forehead and said, "She's not that bad, babe. Just a little. Traditional. Traditional." That word would come to haunt me. We moved into a modest 2-story house on the edge of town. It looked normal from the outside, white picket fence, wind chimes on the porch, rose bushes blooming in the yard. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt the shift. It wasn't our home. It was hers. Doris greeted me with a tight-lipped smile and a once-over that made me feel like a trespasser. She had rules. Unspoken, but very real. No store-bought meals. Women should cook for their husbands. No short skirts. We respect modesty here. No locked doors. This is a family home. We don't hide things from each other. Mark just shrugged and said, "She means well." I started working remotely after the move, and Doris made it her mission to monitor every minute. If I left my desk to pee, she'd ask if I was slacking off. If I took a Zoom call, she'd accidentally vacuum in the background. She constantly reminded me how she'd raised 5 children, at home, naturally, with nothing but hot towels and Jesus. I should have seen it then. The control. The possessiveness. The way she looked at me like I was a placeholder, not a partner to her son, but a temporary vessel for grandchildren. But love makes you blind. Or maybe just hopeful. The day I found out I was pregnant, I cried tears of joy. Mark was thrilled, or at least he acted like it. He told Doris before I even got a chance to. She screamed with joy, dropped to her knees, and thanked the Lord right there in the living room. She called it a blessing. I didn't know blessings came with handcuffs. From that day on, I wasn't Sherry anymore. I was a womb on legs. Every move I made was watched, every bite I took was criticized. No sushi. That baby needs nourishment, not raw fish. Why are you sitting with your legs crossed? Do you want to strangle the child? You're still working? That stress is going to make the baby come out sideways. Mark started parroting her words. "Mom's just trying to help," he'd say. "She's done this before." Yeah, and I hadn't. That's why I needed a doctor. But when I scheduled my first OBGYN visit, Doris flipped. She said hospital births were unnatural, sterile, dangerous. Babies need to feel their mother's warmth, not be yanked out under fluorescent lights. I told her I wanted options. She told me I was ungrateful. The next day, my appointment mysteriously got cancelled. I later found out Doris had called pretending to be me and claimed I was switching providers. When I confronted Mark, he looked uncomfortable. "Maybe it wouldn't be so bad," he said. "Mom had all of us at home. She knows what she's doing." My stomach twisted. "You'd rather listen to her than let me have medical care?" He didn't answer. That night, I cried in the shower until the water ran cold. I held my belly and whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what." I knew then that I was alone in this. So I stopped fighting openly. Instead, I started gathering information. I joined online pregnancy forums. I reached out to old friends. I read medical articles until my eyes burned. That's when I messaged Jamie, my college roommate who'd gone on to become an ER nurse. I told her everything. She was furious. "Sherry, that's abuse. You need an exit plan." "I don't want to leave," I said. "Not yet. I need to stay until I can get custody. Until I can make sure they don't try to take my baby." So we made a plan. I bought a burner phone and kept it hidden in the bottom drawer beneath old bras. I installed a tiny camera in the hallway. Jamie helped me pick it out. One of those nanny cams disguised as a phone charger. I placed another in the guest room where Doris held her weekly birthing prep rituals, complete with essential oils and gospel music. We agreed on a safe word. If things went south, if I feared for my life or the baby's, I'd call Jamie and say, "The baby's in the kitchen." That would be her cue to call 911 and get to me immediately. It felt like overkill at the time. But something deep in my bones told me it wouldn't be enough. And I was right. I was 38 weeks when it happened. The pain hit me like lightning at 3 in the morning. Sharp, low, radiating into my back and down my thighs. At first, I thought it was Braxton Hicks, but when I stood up and felt the warm rush between my legs, I knew it was real. "My water just broke," I whispered to Mark, shaking him awake. "We need to go. Now." He blinked, dazed. "Now? It's early." 2 weeks isn't early, I hissed, gripping the wall as another contraction twisted through me. "I need a doctor." But Mark didn't move. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and "God help me," he called for his mother. Within minutes, Doris burst in like she was auditioning for a Civil War drama. She clutched a rag and a bowl of warm water like we were about to churn butter, not deliver a human life. "Oh, praise Jesus. It's time," she beamed. "I'll get the towels. You just breathe through it, sweetheart." "No." My voice was firm, though my body was shaking. "I need a hospital. You don't need doctors poking around your insides. You need peace. Prayer. Warmth." I turned to Mark, my eyes pleading. "Please. This isn't safe." He looked at the floor. "Mom's done this before. Sherry. You're gonna be okay." That was the first time I felt something break in me. Not physically, though that would come, but something deeper. A crack in the foundation of what I thought marriage meant. Love. Protection. Partnership. All of it dissolved with those words. And so it began. Doris ushered me into the living room, where she had already set up a birthing nest like some grotesque Pinterest board from hell, plastic sheets, holy candles, and a bowl of herbs that made me gag. My contractions came hard and fast. I screamed. She told me to keep quiet. "Don't disturb the neighbors, dear. Women have been doing this quietly for centuries." I tried to get up. I tried to crawl toward the door, but Mark held me gently, almost kindly, and said, "Just let it happen, baby. We're doing this as a family." Family. Is that what they called this? A hostage situation with a hymn in the background. Hours passed. I don't know how many. The world blurred. The pain was volcanic, and I was burning from the inside out. I begged for someone to take me to the hospital. Doris just dabbed my forehead with a wet rag and said, "Pain is God's way of reminding us of Eve's mistake." I would have laughed if I wasn't dying. By the 9th hour, I knew something was wrong. The pain wasn't just intense, it was wrong. My vision swam, and my fingers were numb. I was losing blood. A lot of it. Too much. I was slipping into a fog, a weightless, terrifying place that smelled like iron and death. I whispered, I can't feel my legs. Doris didn't flinch. She simply said, your body is doing what it's supposed to. Trust in the Lord. And then, like it was nothing, like she wasn't talking about me, a living, breathing person, she turned to Mark and said, if she doesn't make it, you can always remarry. You're still young. You'll find someone more obedient. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to survive this if I didn't act now. She had said it so casually. Like I was a vase that cracked. Replaceable. I had tears in my eyes. Not from the pain, not even from the betrayal, but from the coldness. The way Mark didn't even argue. He just stared at me like I was fading wallpaper. I reached for the side table, where I had hidden my burner phone beneath a Bible she'd left to bless the baby. My fingers trembled. My vision was tunneling. I didn't even text. I called. It rang once. Twice. Jamie answered. Sherry? I forced the words out, each syllable a war. The baby is in the kitchen. There was silence on the line. Then her breath hitched. I'm coming. I'm calling 911. Hang on. I didn't remember what happened next in real time. I passed out somewhere between reality and nightmares. But Jamie told me later, she never hung up the phone. She stayed on the line while paramedics screamed at the locked door. She stayed on while they broke it down. While Doris fought them, literally tried to block the stretcher, until one of them threatened to arrest her. They rushed me to the ER. Placental abruption. Severe hemorrhaging. I needed an emergency C-section. 1 more hour, the doctor said, and I would have died. My son too. But we made it. Barely. I woke up in a sterile, white room. The kind of cold that gets into your bones. The kind of room you only see in movies when someone has barely survived something horrific. It wasn't a movie. It was my life. The first thing I noticed was the pain. Not just from the surgery, but from the fact that I was alone. There was a small, rhythmic beeping coming from the heart monitor beside me, a sound I would later learn to associate with my survival. The sterile air, the antiseptic smell, it all made me feel like I didn't belong. But the first thing I really noticed was the fact that Mark wasn't there. I remembered the way he had stared at me in the living room while I bled out. I remembered the look in his eyes when Doris told him he could find another wife. I remembered how he didn't even argue. He didn't fight for me. I could feel the tears coming before I realized it. I didn't want to cry. I was supposed to be strong. But the last few days had shattered me in ways I didn't understand. And as much as I hated to admit it, I knew the truth, I had been living a lie. The door to my room creaked open. I flinched, then relaxed when I saw Jamie's familiar face. She didn't say anything at first, just pulled up a chair beside me. The weight of her presence felt like a lifeline. I was so scared, I whispered. My throat was raw. I thought I was going to die. You almost did, Sherry. Jamie's voice was soft but steady, like the calm before a storm. You almost did. She reached for my hand, but I couldn't bring myself to take it at first. The pain was too much, the physical and the emotional ache of betrayal. But finally, I did. I gripped her fingers, letting her warmth fill the emptiness inside me. They tried to kill me, I murmured, my voice breaking. Mark. He didn't do anything. He didn't even fight for me. Jamie's jaw clenched. Sherry, I'm so sorry. This is beyond messed up. But you're going to be okay. You got out, you survived. And I'm here now. We'll fix this. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. The wound was deeper than I could express. It wasn't just the physical injury. It was the feeling of being so utterly alone, even with someone who was supposed to protect me. Jamie, I need you to help me get out of here. I need to be strong for my son. She nodded immediately. Of course. We'll get you out of this mess. And we'll take care of everything. The next few days were a blur of hospital gowns, cold meals, and physical therapy. But the emotional battle, that was just beginning. When they finally discharged me, I went straight to my lawyer. The bruises on my body were fading, but the ones inside my heart, those were far from gone. I had to start somewhere. And that somewhere was securing custody of my son, Lucas. When I showed up at the lawyer's office, I was still weak. But the adrenaline coursing through me gave me a clarity I'd never felt before. I wasn't the same woman I was when I walked into that house, and I would never be again. I need to get full custody, I said, not wasting any time. I need to make sure my son is safe. My lawyer, a tall woman named Sarah, nodded thoughtfully. We can work on that. But we need evidence. Statements. Something concrete that shows your husband's involvement. I hesitated. Mark wasn't involved directly. But his silence. Its complicity. Doris controlled everything. And she made it clear that I wasn't important. It's like I was just an incubator to them. Sarah frowned but didn't speak. She was used to handling messy cases, but this one felt different. This wasn't just about divorce or property. It was about survival. I have recordings, I continued. Jamie has the recordings from the birth. The words Doris said. The way she dismissed my life. We can use that. Perfect, Sarah replied. We'll use everything we can. We'll get you out of this. But when I left the lawyer's office, a terrible thought gnawed at me. Would it even be enough? I didn't trust Mark anymore, and I didn't trust Doris. They had shown me who they were. But part of me still hoped he'd come around. That he'd fight for me, fight for us. That the man I married, the man I loved, wouldn't be lost forever. But I couldn't live my life waiting for someone who couldn't even show up when I was bleeding out on the floor. By the time I got home, Doris was waiting on the doorstep. She had a bouquet in her hands, but I could see the disdain in her eyes. Sherry, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, I wanted to apologize. I know this has been a difficult time for everyone. But Mark and I just want what's best for you. And the baby. The baby. That word. It sounded so cold, so disconnected from the human being I had carried for 9 months. This wasn't a baby to Doris. This was her ticket to control. I'm not here for your apologies, Doris, I said, my voice steady, even though my body was still trembling. I'm here to get my son. And you won't have him. She blinked, taken aback by my boldness. What do you mean? I was just trying to help. No, you weren't. You were trying to control me. You tried to kill me, Doris. And I'm not going to let you anywhere near my son. Her face hardened. She took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. You think you can keep him away from us? You don't know what you're doing, Sherry. You'll never be able to take care of him on your own. I smiled coldly, feeling a sense of power I hadn't known I had. I don't need you, Doris. And neither does Lucas. I turned and walked inside, leaving her standing there. Mark wasn't home. He hadn't come to check on me once in the hospital. Not once. I could hear Doris's voice on the other side of the door, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was done. Inside, I locked the door behind me and sat down on the couch. My baby, my son, was in the next room. And he was mine. All mine. From that moment on, I knew my battle had just begun. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. The days following my confrontation with Doris felt like a haze. Every step was measured, calculated. I had no room for error. I had to focus on getting full custody of Lucas, and I couldn't afford distractions. My emotions were raw, but I knew one thing: I would not let them take him from me. Mark still hadn't come home that night. His absence was deafening, a stark reminder of how far we had drifted. I had tried to ignore the weight of his betrayal, but the truth was inescapable. Every time I looked at Lucas, I saw my husband's face. And every time I thought of Doris, I remembered the way she had dismissed me like I was nothing but a vessel for her control. But as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, something inside me solidified. I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. Not anymore. And especially not on Mark. The next morning, I went to see Sarah, my lawyer. I had made up my mind. This wasn't just about fighting for Lucas's future, it was about fighting for my own dignity, my life, my worth. Sarah, I need to do this. I'm not going to be passive. I can't let them win, I said, my voice firm. I want full custody of Lucas. No shared custody. No negotiations. Sarah was quiet for a moment, looking over the papers she had prepared. She glanced at me, her expression softening. Sherry, I know you're hurt right now, but I need you to be clear-headed. We need to gather more evidence. If you want full custody, we have to prove that Mark and Doris are unfit. I shook my head, frustration bubbling inside me. You don't get it. I don't need proof that they're unfit. I need proof that I'm fit. That I'm a good mother. And that Lucas is better off with me. She met my gaze and nodded. Okay. Let's do it your way. But we have to be careful. If this turns into a full-blown legal battle, it's going to get messy. It might cost us more than we're prepared for. I didn't care about the cost. I didn't care about anything but my son. I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes. The battle had only just begun. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I was gathering evidence, documenting everything that had happened. Sarah filed motions for temporary custody, and we started preparing for the inevitable fight in court. Doris had already begun making moves to secure Lucas's future. It was clear she had her sights set on him, as if he were some kind of prize she could claim as her own. But she had underestimated me. The first time I saw Mark after everything fell apart, I nearly lost control. I had been expecting him to come crawling, to beg for forgiveness, to admit that he was wrong. But he didn't. He walked into the house like nothing had happened, his eyes cold, his face blank. Sherry, he began, his voice low, as though we were discussing something mundane. I've been thinking about everything. Doris and I. We only wanted what was best for you. For us. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed through the empty hallway. What's best for me? For us? You left me to die, Mark. And now you want to act like this is just some misunderstanding? He flinched, but didn't respond. Instead, his gaze shifted toward the crib, where Lucas was sleeping peacefully. The way he looked at my son, like he belonged to him and Doris, like he wasn't even my child, it broke something inside of me. You've been brainwashed, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You don't even see how toxic this is. You've let Doris control everything. You've allowed her to decide what's best for my child. For our child. You don't get to make decisions for him anymore. Mark's expression tightened. You don't understand, Sherry. I'm doing this for him. He needs a stable home. And that means he needs Doris and me. Stable? I spat, incredulous. You've shown me no stability. You've shown me nothing but weakness. You let Doris dictate everything. You weren't there when I needed you. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it was too late. The moment he chose Doris over me, over us, he had sealed his fate. He wasn't the man I thought he was. And he wasn't going to be a part of my future anymore. We're done, Mark, I said quietly, my voice steady. I'm taking Lucas. And if you try to stop me, I'll make sure you never see him again. Mark stared at me, his mouth opening and closing as though he wanted to say something but couldn't. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You'll regret this." I looked at him for a long moment. And I knew, deep down, that I was doing the right thing. I didn't care if Mark regretted anything. I wasn't doing this for him, I was doing it for Lucas. I was doing it for me. "I won't," I said, finally. "I won't." In the following weeks, I threw myself into preparing for court. Sarah and I were relentless, gathering all the evidence we could. Mark and Doris made their move, trying to paint me as an unfit mother, but they had nothing concrete. They had their words, their lies, but I had my truth. And the truth was stronger than any false narrative they tried to create. Mark's lawyer tried to make the case that I was unstable, that my refusal to comply with Doris's beliefs was proof of my inability to make rational decisions. But I knew how to fight back. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, I was fighting for my son's future. And no one was going to take him from me. The first day in court, I felt a knot in my stomach. I was nervous, yes, but I wasn't afraid. I had already won. The day of the trial was here, and my heart raced in my chest. I could hear the distant murmur of voices in the courtroom as I sat in the waiting area. I was preparing for a battle I wasn't sure I could win, but I knew I had to. I couldn't afford to lose. Not this time. Not after everything. Sarah, my lawyer, sat beside me, flipping through the case files one last time. Her calm demeanor helped settle my nerves just a little, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My entire future, Lucas's future, was at stake. "You're ready," Sarah said, looking up from the papers. "You've done everything we discussed. You have the evidence. And you know the truth better than anyone. Don't let them rattle you." I nodded, though the tightness in my chest didn't ease. I wasn't just fighting for custody of my son, I was fighting for my dignity. For my right to stand as his mother without being controlled by anyone, least of all Doris. Mark and Doris were seated at the other side of the room. Doris had her usual stern expression, while Mark's face was harder to read. He wasn't the man I had married, not anymore. He had turned into something else entirely, someone who thought he could walk away from me and still have a say in my life. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The courtroom doors opened, and the proceedings began. I walked in, head high, making my way to the stand. As I settled into the chair, I could feel all eyes on me. The judge, an older man with sharp eyes, looked down at me with an air of judgment. I had expected it, but that didn't make it any easier. "Sherry Williams," the judge said, his voice firm. "You are seeking full custody of your son, Lucas Williams. Can you explain why you believe you should have full custody?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was it. The moment where I had to make my case. I had rehearsed it over and over in my head, but nothing could prepare me for the reality of speaking those words aloud. "I believe I should have full custody because I am Lucas's mother," I began, my voice unwavering. "I love my son more than anything in this world. I have always been there for him, even when my husband and his mother tried to take control of our lives. I'm the one who stayed up all night with him when he was sick. I'm the one who comforted him when he cried. I'm the one who has always been there, and no one can take that from me." I paused, looking over at Mark and Doris. Doris's lips twisted into a smug smile, but I could see the flicker of doubt in Mark's eyes. He wasn't as sure of himself as he once had been. Mark and Doris want Lucas because they believe they can give him a better life. But I know better. I've seen the way they treat him. Doris has always made it clear that she's the one in charge. That she's the one who calls the shots. She doesn't care about what's best for Lucas. She cares about controlling everything, and that includes me. I paused again, gathering my thoughts. The truth had been building inside me for so long, and now I was finally letting it spill out. I am not perfect. I made mistakes. But I am his mother. And I will fight for him. I will fight for his future, for his safety, for his happiness. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure he's not controlled by people who only want him as a pawn in their game. I let the words settle in the air. It was silent for a moment. The judge looked thoughtful, scribbling notes on his pad. I turned to look at Sarah. And she gave me a slight nod, as though to say I'd done well. Next, Mark and Doris took the stand. Mark was first. He stood up, his shoulders tense, and he looked at me for a long moment before beginning. I love my son, he said, his voice stiff. But Sherry has been unstable. She hasn't been able to handle things properly. She's been making reckless decisions, and I've had to step in to protect Lucas. I could feel my blood boiling at the words. Reckless? Unstable? He was the one who had let Doris manipulate everything. The one who had ignored my pleas when I begged him to support me. The irony of it all was almost too much to bear. But I didn't say anything. I just listened, letting him dig his own grave. Doris's testimony was even worse. She took the stand with all the arrogance she always carried, acting as if she had every right to be there, as if Lucas was her own child. She spoke about her concerns for my well-being, her fabricated worries about how I couldn't handle motherhood, about how I had ignored her advice. I've always wanted the best for Lucas, Doris said with a cold smile. And I'm concerned that Sherry isn't capable of providing that. She's emotionally unstable, and I fear for Lucas's safety. I can provide him with the stability he needs, unlike his mother. I could feel my fists clenching under the table, but I kept my composure. Doris was lying, and I had the truth on my side. Then, it was time for cross-examination. Sarah stood, confident and calm as she approached the stand. Ms. Hart, Sarah began, her tone sharp but controlled. You claim that Sherry is emotionally unstable. Yet, you and your son had no problem forcing her into a dangerous home birth, ignoring her health deteriorating, and refusing to take her to the hospital. Does that seem like stability to you? Doris froze, and the room grew tense. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sarah continued. And you, Mr. Williams. You claim to care about Lucas, but you stood by while your mother manipulated everything. You allowed her to make decisions that directly affected your wife's well-being, even when you knew it was wrong. Do you honestly believe that's what's best for your son? The room was silent, and for the first time, I could see doubt in Mark's eyes. Doris, too, was visibly shaken. Sarah had hit them where it hurt. They had no defense for the truth. As the day went on, I felt the scales tipping in my favor. I had told my truth. I had made it clear that I was not going to let them win. Lucas was my son, and I would not let them take him from me. The final ruling came a few days later. The judge's words were a blur as I listened, heart racing. My hands were shaking, but I kept them folded in my lap, trying to maintain some semblance of calm. I've reviewed all the evidence and the testimonies, the judge said, his voice firm. And I find that Sherry Williams is a fit and loving mother. Mark Williams and Doris Hart have demonstrated a lack of proper concern for the well-being of both Sherry and Lucas. Therefore, I'm awarding full custody of Lucas to Sherry Williams. I couldn't believe it. It was over. I had won. Lucas was mine. I felt the tears well up in my eyes as I looked over at Sarah. She was smiling, proud of the victory. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had done it. I had protected my son. And no one would ever take him away from me again. As we walked out of the courtroom, Lucas's small hand in mine, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. We were free. And we would be okay.